I'm truly grateful for the chance to have served in uniform for this country over 43.5 years, and I feel privileged to have held the position as the 20th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. However, this moment isn't focused on those of us standing here today. It doesn't center on the President, the Defense Secretary, myself, or anyone else in leadership. This goes beyond our individual roles. It's centered on our system of government. It's about the principles that define our nation. What sets our forces apart from others around the globe is clear. Our armed services stand out in a distinct way. We pledge our loyalty not to a specific land. We don't swear allegiance to a group or community. Our commitment isn't to a faith. We avoid vowing service to a monarch or ruler or to someone who acts like a despot. All right, this situation stands out as truly remarkable and something we've never seen before in the story of our nation. The President found himself directly challenged by one of his senior military officers during a session at the White House that was captured on camera and shown live. This officer accused the President of disloyalty right there in view of everyone, including reporters, aides, fellow service members, and officials. In that instant, the President's reply was absent. He offered no rebuttal or justification. His expression shifted noticeably, and he abruptly exited the room, appearing unsettled and avoiding further engagement. Events like this intense exchange haven't occurred with any modern leader in our country. The repercussions are now rippling through the Capitol, creating significant unrest. Let's break down the details of this incident. In what seemed like a standard gathering at the executive residence, which was either streamed or documented, a prominent military figure, thought by many to be the ex-chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, or perhaps another top-level commander, rose and addressed the President head-on. Based on accounts from those present and the available recordings that are spreading widely, this officer met the President's gaze and stated plainly, "You've broken faith with our founding document, your solemn promise, and this nation," essentially labeling the head of state as someone who had turned against his duties, all in plain sight of the group. No active service member has ever leveled such a charge openly against a sitting leader in our historical record. Those in uniform are expected to uphold deference towards civilian oversight, regardless of differing views on policy choices. Yet this officer evidently hit a limit and chose to voice his concerns openly, regardless of the personal risks involved. Before we dive deeper, though, a quick note on reliability. Traditional news sources have become hard to count on these days. That's the reason we created Pump Politics, to deliver genuine accounts, solid background, and views free from big business influence. If you're looking to keep up with developments, sign up for our no-cost updates. We'll deliver insights right to your email daily. Check the link below to get started. And if you'd like to back our efforts, come aboard. Join the group dedicated to seeking real facts. Okay, moving forward with the discussion, we reject pledges to someone aiming for absolute control. Our loyalty isn't directed at any single person. Instead, we commit to our foundational law and to the core concept that represents our land, ready to give everything to safeguard it. Those ideals are embedded in our nation's key charter, serving as the guiding principle for everyone fortunate enough to represent our forces. That charter is what every uniformed member vows to shield from threats, both outside and within our borders. The individuals who gave their lives for liberty over the past 2.5 centuries in this land cannot have made those offerings without purpose. The countless service members injured in our conflicts didn't lose parts of themselves or spill their life force just to watch this grand test of self-governance fade away. Absolutely not. We as citizens, and we in the ranks, cannot abandon the legacy of our predecessors, and will stand firm in support of that charter. It guides us forward. It defines our identity and our purpose in the fight. My thanks and blessings to our forces and to this nation. The President's immediate demeanor revealed a lot. Instead of standing his ground, questioning the claim, clarifying his choices, or pointing out errors in the statement, he paused in place. Several observers noted a clear alteration in his appearance, with signs of frustration and surprise emerging, followed by him rising and departing the session. He left swiftly without addressing the charge of disloyalty. Consider the implications here. When faced with an allegation of betrayal and you're not at fault, you typically respond right away. You'd lay out reasons, provide evidence, and correct the record. But if the claim holds weight, avoidance might be the path taken. And that's what appeared to unfold. The president withdrew because confronting the words directly seemed difficult, lacking a strong counter. Naturally, given his style, silence didn't last. Soon after, posts appeared on his social platform, and he spoke on a news channel, criticizing the officer. He described the individual as unfaithful, linked to hidden agendas, unworthy of the role, all familiar tactics when truth surfaces about him. He insisted that defense officials examine the matter and discipline the officer for defying orders and showing disregard for the top command position. But the story takes an intriguing turn from there. Defense headquarters didn't comply with those requests. They not only dismissed them subtly, but issued open responses upholding the standards of service leaders and their ability to express honest views to those in charge, even if it involves challenging a leader who has overstepped. This goes beyond a single officer acting out of turn. Reports indicate this exchange as the peak of long-standing strains between the president and his defense team, particularly regarding requests for personal commitments and ideas about deploying forces within our borders for partisan reasons. Service commanders have grown more uneasy with tendencies toward concentrated power. This particular officer seems to have reached a point of no return, opting to express openly what others in uniform have discussed behind closed doors, that the president has failed his commitment and represents a risk to our foundational principles. The importance of this event is hard to downplay. Our defense forces have a strong history of avoiding partisan involvement and upholding oversight by elected officials. Commanders don't typically criticize leaders in public view. They might step down as a form of objection or raise issues internally, but accusing the head of state of disloyalty on camera breaks from tradition. That an officer felt driven to shatter that norm highlights the gravity of the circumstances. Those in command are taught to adhere to directives and honor the structure of authority.
For someone to set that aside and openly charge the leader with grave misconduct suggests a belief that the actions in question are so harmful to the nation that remaining quiet would constitute a worse form of disloyalty than speaking up. Having this captured on video matters greatly, as it provides undeniable proof that resists alteration or reinterpretation. The president can't deny the occurrence or suggest misrepresentation. The public can witness the officer's words and the president's startled departure. That recording is spreading rapidly, destined for repeated showings in reports and political messaging. The sight of the president facing a disloyalty claim from his own command figure, then leaving without a defense, carries heavy impact. It reinforces long-standing critiques that he's unsuitable for the role, has neglected his duties, and has eroded trust among his defense advisors.
The Defense Department's choice not to reprimand the officer holds equal weight, demonstrating that the organization is resisting calls for blind allegiance and interference in operations. In essence, defense leaders are affirming service to our core laws over personal ties, and they won't penalize truthful statements about breaches of those laws. This serves as a clear dismissal of the president's influence and a sign that forces won't function as a private tool for improper directives or to quiet opposition. This stands as a pivotal point in the current administration and potentially for our system's future. When defense forces openly resist executive directives due to concerns of national betrayal, we enter unfamiliar ground with real risks. It's essential to examine the lead up to this clash and its broader effects. So let's explore the background and factors that built to this tense moment, as it didn't arise without context. Strains between the president and his command team have simmered throughout his tenure, culminating in this open charge of disloyalty. To start, consider the dynamic with Mark Milley and the president, assuming he's the figure involved. Though some sources point to another senior commander, Milley acted as the top advisor during the prior term, holding the highest military post and serving as key counsel to the executive. From available information, their interaction was strained early on. The president sought unwavering personal support and preferred advisors who followed without hesitation. Milley conversely viewed his duty as tied to foundational principles, not to an individual. This core difference fueled ongoing disputes. Matters intensified around mid-2020 amid civil unrest following a notable incident when the president aimed to involve active personnel in managing demonstrations across cities. Milley and peers strongly opposed, noting that employing troops against citizens for internal matters would violate established practices and possibly laws like the one restricting such use. The president reacted with anger at the resistance, beginning to doubt their commitment and considering replacements with more agreeable figures. Milley joined the president for a public appearance near a park where crowds were dispersed forcefully, later expressing regret for involvement in what he saw as a partisan display. That statement angered the president as it cast a negative light and indicated even his chief advisor believed boundaries were crossed. Reports also emerged in the closing phase of the first term that Milley, worried about potential rash actions, engaged in discreet talks with foreign counterparts to confirm stability and avoid misunderstandings. When details surfaced, the president branded Milley disloyal and even suggested severe punishment. The contrast of labeling Milley while he worked to avert conflict highlights the deep rift. Post-election and departure from office, Milley shared in discussions that the president appeared more erratic toward the end. He likened certain statements to those of historical autocrats. Milley also acknowledged fears of attempts to retain power improperly. Such remarks from a figure of that rank were unusual, signaling views among commanders that the president posed a risk to governance. Upon returning for another term after the recent vote, existing resentments lingered. Milley had stepped down, but others with similar worries stayed in service. From the outset, the president emphasized the need for dedication and readiness to execute any instructions, potentially including internal uses for border control, crowd management, or addressing rivals. Commanders found these expectations disturbing as their mission focuses on external defense, not internal politicking. They recognize the perils of armed forces entering domestic affairs, which can lead to oppressive rule. Our commanders value their political stance and respect for elected oversight, yet that oversight expects leaders to honor legal boundaries, not pursue unchecked authority with forces as instruments. This creates the challenge commanders face, following directives seen as improper means, neglecting their core vow. Refusing invites disorder in the hierarchy. It's a tough bind, and this officer evidently concluded that direct public challenge was the necessary step. The exact catalyst remains somewhat unclear, but indications point to discussions on requiring loyalty statements from officers or plans for using troops against domestic groups. The president has mentioned options like temporary rule in areas, military involvement in migration, or special proceedings for opponents. These concepts alarm commanders as they erode established standards.
By rising in that session and labeling the president as having failed his duties, the officer likely echoed sentiments held by many in leadership who have observed these shifts with concern but remained silent due to protocol. The presence of recording equipment in the session adds layers. Some suggest the timing was intentional, ensuring the statement would be preserved and shared broadly. That approach would require courage, essentially risking professional standing and possible repercussions to alert the public. If the belief is that the president endangers the system, such a step might justify the cost. The charge of failing the core document, personal vow, and nation carries weight. Possible references include attempts to challenge election outcomes backed by probes showing improper efforts to alter results. It might tie to the Capitol event where encouragement and delay in response led to harm. Handling of secure materials or sharing with unauthorized parties could factor in, or ongoing uses of authority for gain or against foes. Any combination might amount to neglecting protective duties. The president's quick exit over a response says much. A leader wrongly accused would counter firmly, highlighting achievements, detailing rationale, and refuting claims. Departing implies acknowledgement without rebuttal. At times, no words speak clearest, and that pause stood out. Predictably, restraint didn't hold. Online updates and media spots followed, targeting the officer's character without tackling the core issue. Efforts to redirect focus to the critic rather than the content falter, as footage allows independent judgment. Facing a disloyalty call and retreating leaves a mark no explanation can fully erase. Calling for defense probes and penalties fits patterns of seeking to eliminate opposition through scrutiny and consequences, deterring others.
The refusal by defense officials offers hope, showing institutions can resist and safeguard honest expression. Their statements, while measured, clearly support open dialogue and reject using the system for vendettas. This opposes the president's stance, potentially leading to larger conflicts. If directives to act are ignored, what follows? Removals, searches for aligned figures, threats of alternative measures? Such scenarios shouldn't arise in a stable system, yet they do now. Let's consider future outcomes and effects on our governance and the president's leadership capacity. First, losing trust from defense commanders to where an open disloyalty charge occurs creates doubts about authority. Forces hold high public regard, and their views on national betrayal carry influence. Second, the departure footage without defense will loop in coverage and promotions, symbolizing avoidance and unease, shaping views beyond control. Third, defense resistance to discipline highlights remaining safeguards, though under strain, testing the equilibrium between oversight and core duties. Looking ahead, some lawmakers suggest activating removal provisions for incapacity in role. The case, a leader charged with disloyalty by command exiting without reply, shows unfitness, but activation needs key officials' agreement, unlikely with selected team, so probably not viable without escalation. Removal proceedings offer another path, providing grounds for claims of duty neglect, principal violation, and lost command trust. Opposing parties face choices: back the leader despite charges, or seek responsibility. Many may avoid comment, hoping fade, but accumulation makes that tough. The officer involved likely faces fallout, even with institutional backing, through reviews, damaging leaks, or subtle pressures to depart. Retaliation patterns target critics. Will peers support or isolate?
Unity strengthens resistance, division discourages voice. The core matter of oversight by civilians drives this issue. In our system, forces respond to chosen leaders, but that expects respect for limits, not misuse for control. When breached, do commanders refuse improper commands? Can they voice public concerns on betrayal? These debates will continue among experts. Past examples include resignations as protest, like a former defense head's exit with implied criticism. But that's unlike an active accusation. This step ventures into rare territory, viewed as brave or disruptive based on stance. If seen as threat to system, the act appears principled. If as attack on elected figure, it seems defiant. Opinions divide, often by affiliation. Supporters defend. Opponents praise. Neutrals weigh footage. That visual will sway undecideds. Upcoming elections will center more on leadership suitability and principle adherence.
One side will highlight the event as proof of enablement, others shift to practical matters like finances and security. But overshadowing proves challenging with such imagery. Global aspects matter. Partners and rivals observe, assessing reliability. Lost command trust questions dependability. Opponents may exploit division. Allies worry over joint efforts if internal doubt persists. The charge demands eventual detailed reply beyond attacks. Addressing specifics, defenses, and accounts becomes necessary. So far, focus on critic avoids substance, but demands for clarity will grow from public and officials. Defense stance ahead is key. If resistance holds, it affirms no political misuse. Yielding suggests vulnerability. Service spirit and enlistment may shift based on handling. Watching if values uphold or bend affects decisions. Ultimately, a command figure openly charged the president with disloyalty during a recorded session, met with departure over reply.
This rare event stems from accumulated strains on commitment, boundaries, and force roles. Calls for discipline met refusal, prioritizing standards. This crisis probes oversight, suitability, and loyalty to principles. Elections will reflect this. Global watchers note the turmoil testing institutional resilience against overreach. The exit image endures as symbol of unmet challenge. Repercussions will influence governance and relations long term. Keep watching as this challenge to our system continues with much at stake.